Greetings everyone. This is basically my video answer to the Hasbro critical race theory video from Desolator Magic. It adds to the picture the pieces of the puzzle from sort of the German perspective. I'm speaking German as my first language, so my accent may be pretty clear and I'm not perfect at English, so excuse me for that. I'm trying my best, it's okay. So basically, this video adds some additional information of the origins of these ideologies and covers these processes called ideological subversion. Ideological subversion is a term that was coined by Yuri Bezmenov, a former KGB agent. And in this video, which I'm showing you, he basically describes what's going on today. Listen carefully what he has to say.
Same thing was done under the guidance of the Soviet embassy in Hanoi, and same thing I was doing in New Delhi. To my horror, I discovered that in the files where people were doomed to execution, there were names of pro-Soviet journalists with whom I was personally friendly.
Pro-Soviet?
Yes. They were idealistically minded leftists who made several visits to USSR, and yet the KGB decided that come revolution or drastic changes in political structure of India, they will have to go.
Why is that?
Because they know too much. Simply because, you see, the useful idiots, the leftists who are idealistically believing in the beauty of Soviet socialist or communist or whatever system, when they get disillusioned, they become the worst enemies. That's why my KGB instructors specifically made a point, never bother with leftists. Forget about these political prostitutes. Aim higher. This was my instruction. Try to get into large circulation, established conservative media. Rich, filthy rich movie makers, intellectuals, so-called academic circles. Cynical, egocentric people who can look into your eyes with angelic expression and tell you a lie. These are the most recruitable people, people who lack moral principles, who are either too greedy or to suffer from self-importance. They feel that they matter a lot. These are the people who KGB wanted very much to recruit.
But to eliminate the others, to execute the others, don't they serve some purpose? Wouldn't they be the ones they rely on?
They serve purpose only at the stage of destabilization of a nation. For example, your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by...
Okay, so let's recap that. So-called useful idiots are used for the destabilization of nations to infiltrate the population with Marxism, communism, socialism, whatever you want. And also the key is to get into media, universities, schools and all that stuff. That's where they want their agents to be, to influence the rest of the population into their silly, stupid ideas. That's basically what Yuri Bezmenov said. And that was around 40 years ago. And because these people never gave up on their goals, you now see basically the damage they have done. Do you... Des has already covered their basically infiltration of companies like Hasbro and the infiltration of movies, of cinematic stuff. Like movies today are basically ideological indoctrination and nothing less. They are not art, they are ideology in many cases. This new Star Wars basically is simply a feminism movie first and a Star Wars movie last. Though it's true, because the main point that movie wasn't entertaining or being anything good, a good movie. It was about indoctrinating the people into sort of feministic ideals. Okay, and now you will see some the most disgusting things you can imagine. We are talking also about ideological subversion in Germany and around the world of especially small children. It will get pretty disgusting if you're not as mentally stable as you need to. You can pause the video, of course, but we need to get through this. First, in this article, Henrik M. Broder from Germany basically said that Germany today is an asylum where mentally ill or deranged people are reigning, and well, the public has gotten mad, and he's absolutely right about that. Germany today is disgusting. Why? I'll show you some examples. First, let's cover this topic. Do you see this? This nice little cat is Minka. Minka is in the room with me right now as I'm speaking. But of course, this video was created at a different time for a different video. And Minka is basically a nice cat. She has done no harm to anyone. She has ears. So basically, she was brought to the animal sanctuary with cut ears, and we got her from there after she was damaged like this, because the address of her former owners was printed into her ears. Yes, cruel assholes that did this, but she survived it, and now she's living happily and peacefully here with us. But now it gets disgusting. An article and on the ND page, ND Aktuell, journalism from the left is what this here means. And this article goes about this woman, Katharina Schwirkus, wants to basically get rid of all pets of cats and dogs from the lives. She says that cats and dogs are bad for the climate because they eat meat. Surprise for you! These animals have eaten meat ever since, and nothing had been damaged by it. And they would be so bad because of their CO2 billions. That's so stupid. Man, first and foremost, in Germany there is by law that no extra animals get slaughtered for the production of cat and dog food. They get basically the stuff that is left that humans won't eat after animals get slaughtered in, well, Schlachthöfe, it's called in Germany. You know, yeah, where animals get slaughtered and packed into meat for the supermarkets. So there is nothing bad about that, basically. And this climate change by CO2 is such a blatant lie. Do you know that in the time of the dinosaurs, basically, the CO2 in the atmosphere was over 3 times the concentration it is today, and animals and plants got twice to thrice the size from today because plants use CO2 to grow. There's nothing bad about that gas. Get that out of your head. But that's basically why she thinks or means that cats and dogs would have basically to die out and to get kicked out of cities, and no one should ever get pets again. And when someone messes with Minka, we are getting pretty angry here, right? I mean, other pet owners, you can let me know your thought in the comment section, but this is completely nuts. And she also goes on to say that in Germany cats often get older than 15 years because their owners are ready to help them with medical problems and go to the veterinarian. Yeah, why not? Any sane human wants his pets to be healthy and to be okay and alive. That's simply common sense. But she doesn't want this because she wants the pets basically to die out as fast as they can, and that's what she wants. Yeah, and that there is too much tolerance for pet owners. Man. Yeah, if this already sounds pretty crazy for you, it gets even crazier. This so-called Amadeo Antonio Stiftung, Amadeo Antonio Foundation, has brought out a pamphlet which states to children that they should report children and or their parents if their children have some certain behaviors. And they say that these behaviors are because they are extremely right, racist, basically Nazis. And now we are going over some of these criteria that they deem make a child into a Nazi child. The girl has braids, basically. Girls wearing braids are far right for them. So basically, the hairstyle gets connected to a political opinion. That's insane. And the Kleider, can't remember the English word currently. It's basically, yeah, like long skirts, whatever. And yeah, that they get at home taught how to do laundry, how to cook, and all that stuff, which is completely normal. That is simply the act of making a human being independent and yeah, getting them ready for normal life, normal healthy life. And the boy does basically much sports, which is normal and healthy for boys to do sports or to make some go for a walk often or go jogging. That's A few decades ago, this was normal. This was a normal, healthy lifestyle. And now they want to criminalize this and basically use innocent children as spies to sort of spot so-called far-right Nazis by their hairstyles and wanting to have a normal, healthy lifestyle. This is pretty insane, but it gets much worse. At the University of Hanover, there was something, a paper that was reached out to the full assembly of the students' body, and what they wanted is to prohibit chess, playing chess, a simple, innocent board game. And now, their reasons, it is cultural appropriation, because it's from the Persian cultural area, and it would basically stealing cultural good. Who cares? Second, racism, because they are only two homogen groups of figures that are only black and white, and they are only different because of their color. And yeah, sexism and patriarchal structures because of kings and queens and that stuff. To basically enjoying violence. Chess and violence? What have they drunken? Yeah. And there are much more stupid things. One of the most stupid is perversion of transsexuality, because only when you get so-called your peasants at the end of the board, they are able to change their gender. That was these were some of their reasons why they wanted to forbid chess in the University of Hanover. This is pretty insane, but now, brace yourself. In kindergardens in Mainz, there is from an initiative of, you could call them ideological subverters, from the government itself, Rheinland-Pfalz unterm Regenbogen. Rheinland-Pfalz is one of the districts of Germany, basically, or of the Federal Republic of Germany. Rheinland-Pfalz under the rainbow is basically what is this. Sounds familiar? Yes. This is basically an organization that goes on to teach children in the kindergarten sexual games and this a lot of disgusting shit. And what you get from that, in Köln, Cologne, in a kindergarten basically, there were children that were sexually assaulted by 5-year-old other children. Sexual assaults in kindergartens. And the victims had to go, not the criminals, basically the 5-year-old children. Man, yeah. And that is basically the result of how these ideological subversions have slipped into kindergartens. And it goes even further. In the Technical Museum in Dresden, there was an exhibition for family and especially for children that basically was pornographic for children. Yeah. It goes on. Here is from the BZGA, Bundeszentrale für gesundheitliche Aufklärung, which is an agency of the government itself. It's something to tell people from in the kindergarten age, from the 4th until the 6th year of their life, how to how they should experience their sexuality. Do you see this? Do you see, do you have any urges to do any of this stuff with your children when you see that? I don't. So, let's go on. This is someone from the government itself. It is basically the porn puppet Lutz, which is making, how's it called? It advertising for sexual diversity from the government itself. This is one of the co-workers of this Bundeszentrale für gesundheitliche Aufklärung, better Ideological Subversion. And these guys go to get these porn puppets and all that stupid shit into a kindergarten box where the kindergarten kids can play with these porn puppets. That's pretty disgusting already, but it goes on. A sociologist once, and that in the schools, in the school lessons, that children do not theoretical, practical practices with this stuff. Looks familiar, right? That's totally what children should do at school, right? If it wouldn't be that bad, you could laugh about it, but it's that severe. And now we are going about this pamphlet from Pro Familia NRW, which means it is a sub-organization of Planned Parenthood, so that probably a bit better. And here they go on to say that little children, when they learn to control how to not pee themselves or not anymore need diapers all the time, that they are basically little fetishists that enjoy doing that, or holding or releasing their shit in their anus. That's what they are telling you in this stupid paper. And then they go on to tell people that basically are around for the children and with the children in the kindergarten to basically get naked, do silly games, and like this here, get naked or partially naked and sniff around at the bodies of other children. That's so-called children games that they introduce into the kindergartens. Yeah. Holy shit. And here is another of these brochures in German. Yeah. Huh. Do you think this is coincidence? Do you think this is necessary? I don't think so. And here again from Bundeszentrale für gesundheitliche Aufklärung, from the government itself, for the development from the first until the 6th year of life. Government itself. This is a songbook with basically perverted children's songs. And here, this is from 0 to 4. These are guidelines from the WHO for what to do for the sexual education of 0 to 4-year-old children, for the parents basically, what they should do. I'm not going any further into it. You can read it for yourself. Links in the description, of course. And it's from the WHO, from the World Health Organization and the Federal Center for Health Education, Bundeszentrale für gesundheitliche Aufklärung, from the German government itself, basically. Yeah, pretty disgusting, right? Here, WHO, the Department of Europe. This is no coincidence. And now, also, why? Well, the UNO chief for children's rights was arrested or judged because of sexually assaulting children. So basically, the man that was sort of responsible for sort of protecting children by law and all that stuff is one of the people that really do that stuff, that assaults children. And this man here, Beck, wanted to legalize basically pedophilia with 12-year-olds and above. So basically he wanted to decriminalize the stuff that this UNO chief and many others in many governments, there were major discoveries since a few years in Germany especially of pedophilia rings in the governments. Basically, it is to decriminalize what they are doing on a daily basis, so they are not being held accountable for their crimes anymore. That is one of their reasons. And of course, yeah, there is more to that, but yeah. That is already pretty disgusting shit. And now you maybe start to wonder, how did we get there? How did this shit get so bad? And in the second part of this video, I want to cover basically the roots, how this ideological subversion started, why it started, and how it is done. So stay tuned. I'll make a short break and then this video will continue after a short cut. Okay, welcome back. So in this part of the video we'll go into the roots about why and how the school systems and the universities have gotten infested by socialism and by ideological idiots in the first place. We are going back to the roots when public mandatory schooling was established and when it got corrupted in the first place. Basically, if there would be no schools, if you would have not gotten into a public mandatory school, you would be able to get a normal, healthy, intelligent man. What we have here is that is Vera von Birkenbiel. She is a brain researcher that has, before she passed away, researched how humans really learn stuff. And her research basically says that schools are designed, deliberately designed, in a way that makes it nearly impossible for a human brain to truly learn. Now you ask yourself, that's a pretty bad thing, isn't it? Yes, of course. And she also says in this video that in any normal economic system, a system that produces so much failure like the public school system, the system would have been questioned and abolished already. But she also goes on to she goes to the point, but what if the school system does pretty much everything right? What if the school system basically does what it was designed to do? That is a very good question.
Sagen Sie, das waren Sie zum Zeitpunkt Ihrer Geburt, das war Ihr Potenzial. Und wenn Sie sich optimal hätten entwickeln dürfen zu einem Homo sapiens.
So she says this here is your potential, intellectual potential from your birth. If they would have let you reach your normal potential, you would have become your full potential, full, intelligent Homo sapiens.
Dann hätten sie alles entwickelt, dann wären sie rausgekommen, intelligent, kreativ und all diese Dinge. Falls Sie so jemanden kennen, sagen Sie Bescheid. In der Regel ist da was dazwischen gekommen. Und das nennen wir Erziehung. Und so hat man sie normal gemacht. Einen großen Teil der Schuld dieses hier trägt.
That is public schooling and so-called, she called it kulturelle Erziehung. Basically how your society or your culture is made to form you, or basically is as a collective dumped down through schools, universities and all that, which lowers your potential and makes everyone basically get to the same level, down to the same level of stupidity. That's what she said. And now we'll go to the very roots of these systems. I need to tell you some stuff just in short because we don't have too much time. It's pretty, the overall history of schooling is pretty long. But basically it began in Prussia, in Germany. Mandatory public schooling, not schools itself, but mandatory public schooling. That's what we're talking about. Mandatory public schooling was first established in Prussia in 1819, and its the purpose of this was to make soldiers, basically, to create a state-obedient soldiers with muddled minds that do not question the authority and simply follow orders. That was basically the purpose of mandatory public schooling there. And some specific people from America studied basically in Germany, in the University of Berlin, and then brought this school system with them back to America. So there is one of these connections between Germany and America. Very interesting topic. And I have much of that stuff available currently with citations and all that stuff because I'm writing a book and the book covers a part of that. In the book it is described in much more detail and much longer. We are going over the most important parts for that. And yeah, all cut, then we see us again. Okay, first we'll cover the so-called General Education Board from Rockefeller. This is very important because without money, without enough financial power behind such a move, there is no, it's pretty much impossible to reform schooling and reform schools itself. So Rockefeller made the General Education Board, and the purpose of it was described in the so-called occasional letter number 1, written by Frederick T. Gates, the director of charity of the Rockefeller Foundation. The text has the title The Country School of Tomorrow. And now, brace yourselves, I'll read this text now. When I first read this text, it seemed pretty diabolical and demonic to me. Yeah. So let's go on. I'm quoting. Yeah. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers, or men of learning, or men of science, We have not to raise up from among them authors, educators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo-grade artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have ample supply. We are to follow the admonitions of the good apostle, who said, "Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low degree, and generally, with respect to these high things, all that we shall try to do is just to create presently about these country homes an atmosphere and conditions such that if by chance a child of genius should spring up from the soil, that genius will surely bud and not be blinded. Putting, therefore, all high things quite behind us, we turn with a sense of freedom and delight to the simple, lowly, needful things that promise well for rural life. For the task that we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one. To train, not to educate, these people as we find them for a perfectly ideal life just where they are. Yes, ideal, for we shall allow ourselves to be extravagant since we are only dreaming. No, he's really doing that. Call it idyllic if you like. An idyllic life under the skies and within the horizon, however narrow, could also be the mental horizon people, where they first opened their eyes. We are to try to make that life just where it is, healthful, intelligent, efficient, to fill it with thought and purpose and with a gracious social culture, not without its joys. Man, that was their mission statement. Let that sink in. He wants to fill your life with thought and purpose. Not let you think for yourself or choose the purpose of your life yourself. No. Holy shit. He wanted basically lucky factory slaves for a new industrial age. And they should have been, they were to produce through these systems and through his restructuring of the public system. Now, here is the official readability statistics of the government itself. This is from 2017 down to 1992, how many people of the 8th grade are able to read at or above proficient. That means roughly 60% and even more of that, of the pupils in the 8th grade are unable to read. Get that. And they are putting so much money, so much tax money into these systems. And since all this time, they have been unable to teach a whole class of children how to properly read? Oh man. How could that simple task go wrong? We are going about even more interesting stuff related to reading. And it is important to cover the topic. There was a deliberate destruction of the readability of the American population, which we'll cover in a few minutes. First, there are at the moment also researches, which I can link in the description, that say that basically from birth, children are wired in their brain to be able to learn to read. So it is biologically extremely easy for children to read. If you get people to read that badly, there is an enormous amount of criminal energy necessary to get that done. Okay. And now we are getting to this story with Russia and Hegel, Wundt, and all these so-called philosophers, basically crazy ideologists with crazy materialistic, evolutionistic, Darwinistic, racist thoughts in their minds, egotistical personalities that wanted to spread their ideology and taught their ideologies to their students in the universities. Now we are basically at the University of Berlin, and there was the so-called Hegelian and Wundtian psychology and philosophy. So keep in mind what Yuri Bezmenov said about moral principles and peoples without moral principles. So there is this Wundtian teaching. For the Wundtians, there is no God and no soul. So basically, human beings, and in general, everything is a soulless thing. Human beings are just another sort of brick in the wall. Traditional religions and their pillars are unnecessary, which I have to give him credit. Yes, that is right to some extent. And with the exclusion of dogma and creed, also the immutable truth or absolute truth for him is dead and buried, which is logically flawed and stupid. It's simply like that. There are personal preferences, like what you like the most as your ice cream, or what you eat, what you prefer to eat. This is your own personal truth. If you say, I like basically peppermint ice cream the most, this is an absolute truth for you yourself. It is the absolute truth that you love peppermint ice cream, for example. That's it. There is truth, there is absolute truth. And also, basically, if there is a tree standing around, the truth that there is a tree standing around is a truth that has to do with something outside of human individuals. This is a collective truth, basically a truth for all of us, and we all can experience it and prove it. Basically, if you walk against a tree, you can argue, oh, I don't believe there is a tree. Okay, good luck with that. But if you hurt your nose while walking into it, your fault for not believing in absolute truth and reality, logic, and facts. That's your thing. But that is how these people thought. That was their ideology, and that was what they taught at the university. That was their philosophy. And for them, there is no room for a fixed natural law or natural rights or absolute moral. Yeah. In other words, it's moral relativism. What is a crime for someone is perfectly acceptable for someone else. It's important because these social Darwinists and eugenics of that time, basically what they wanted is to justify genocide. And the cousin, Galton, of Darwin was founder of the British Eugenics Society, and Darwin and others of that time meant that Basically, it would be normal and natural that people drive other people extinct, and there is nothing criminal about this. It's just normal. So basically what they try to justify is genocide and mass murder. And that is also playing a part, partially playing into this asocial moral philosophy of these Wundtians. So, okay, let's go on. So basically for the Wundtians, humans are soulless machines, apparatuses, that they have to program, not learn by themselves, getting programmed. And in 1854, there was Daniel Cole Gilman, the first president of the Johns Hopkins University, which was founded by Rockefeller. He studied Hegelian philosophy at the of the University of Berlin. His uncle was treasurer of the Lodge Skull and Bones, in which he was a member later. Later, the Lodge Skull and Bones practically took over the Yale University. Basically, they gathered together to form the bodies at the Yale University, which means they were then able to decide who gets to teach stuff and who not, thus choosing what topics get taught and what topics get not taught. That's it. And this Gilman later met with Frederick T. Gates, the man from the Rockefeller Foundations, and the man who wrote The Country School of Tomorrow from the General Education Board. In 1887, the assistant of Wilhelm Maximilian Wundt in Leipzig, James McKean Kettle, is converted through Francis Galton, the cousin of Darwin, converted to the social Darwinism. Basically, this ideology, what we talked about, that they have all the rights to do genocide and all that shit. You know that stuff. And Gilman, in 1889, elected his lodge brother G. Stanley Hall, an American student of Wundt, Wilhelm Maximilian Wundt, to the new professor for psychology and pedagogic. Yeah. And Stanley Hall had studied Hegelian philosophy and sort of for a while was personally taught by Wundt himself. He became the vice president of the Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, and got the mentor of John Dewey. That is pretty important. That is how this Hegelian philosophy, how this stupid social Darwinistic bullshit philosophy came over to the United States of America. This is the bridge, one of the bridges between the American and the German school system. So, and now we are talking about John Dewey in a few minutes. John Dewey is the man that messed up reading America. Of course, Dewey took over from Stanley Hall his philosophy of his Prussian mentors. And also he wrote books about Hegelian philosophy. And here's a quote from Hegel, that he said the state would be the absolute reality and the individual himself as objective existence, truth and morality only in his capacity as a member of the state. So basically, for Hegelian idiots, the human as an individuum is worthless. It's only a brick in the wall for the state. That is what they think. Do you exist without a state? If there wouldn't be no states, would there still be humans? Yes, there would So basically, yeah, that's so stupid, unlogical bullshit what they are saying. But yeah, that was their ideology at that time, and these so-called big philosophers, big idiots in my eyes, yeah, they had their ideologies, and they thought many other people have to think like them, and they wanted to spread their ideologies, of course. So 1891, James Kettle gets the director for new psychology at the Columbia University also. And from there, he spread this new materialistic, or yeah, their sort of psychology. And also they established the College for the Training of Teachers, which means at that time what these people had accomplished, they were able to now dictate what future teachers and future professors would later teach to their students. So they were beginning to dictate the curriculum. And they dictated their curriculum, of course, with their ideologies. And 1895, John Dewey went to teach at the Rockefeller-financed University of Chicago, of course, in philosophy, psychology, and teaching. And he erected the Dewey School as so-called laboratory for teaching, or educational laboratory. So, yeah, okay, and that is this part that I mentioned. Here are basically the scientific studies that say that children are pre-wired to be able to read. And Samuel Blumenfeld has also investigated about this stuff. And he found out that before there was mandatory schooling in America, America had in some places, a readability rates of over or around 99%. And after these schools were introduced, the readability has since sunken strongly. So, and that is, as Americans, you may be more familiar with that than Germans, but this is because of this look-say method. The look-say learning method was invented by Thomas M. Gallaudet in 1830 for deaf people, people that were unable to hear or say something, so not normal, fully developed, healthy humans. And this reading learning method doesn't work. It just is bullshit. You cannot build a house with building the roof first. And this method wants to do exactly that, basically. It doesn't work, and it cannot work in this universe, basically. It's necessary to first learn the alphabet itself, and then get the words together. So basically, they also tested in a Boston school this system, and the result was catastrophic. The children pretty much all, became dyslexic. And yeah, that is simply because of this stupid method. And Dewey later, in Boston they scrapped that idea for a while, and then Dewey met with Rockefeller. And John D. Rockefeller Jr. was a big friend of Dewey's so-called progressive education. And John D. Rockefeller then financed basically Dewey's crusade to bring this stupid method of reading into the public school system. So, yeah. The Rockefeller Finance General Education Board, that's why that was important, financed the so-called Teachers College in Columbia in conjunction with Dewey and Dewey's Lincoln School to experiment on Dewey's deranged ideas and spread them into the school system, because the Teachers College trained teachers that then taught with these methods the rest of the nation, basically. That's how this method, this dysfunctional, stupid method, was spread all over America. Yeah, and there is commentary to reforms that were made in America in the 90s, basically. eagleforum.org is an internet page with concerned parents that basically want homeschooling and criticize the status quo. And there were these so-called Clinton-Riley initiatives. We read about this already, and we also have gone about that statistics. So these Clinton-Riley initiatives made pumped billions of dollars into the betterment of the education and get people to read better, basically, and all that shit. And you saw in the statistics, it worked. It did not work. It brought nothing, because it was only an excuse to basically waste more tax money. The system, as it is it is what they want to have dyslexic people. They want people to be dumbed down and stupid and unable to read, and read even some books where they can learn the stuff they did not learn in school. So, and now we are going even further into the rabbit hole with going over Dewey's stupid ideas and his goals. In short, Dewey was an atheist, communist, socialist, a eugenic, a humanist, and an evolutionist. And yeah, he read a roman from Edward Bellamy, Looking Backward, in which Bellamy described a socialist paradise in America in the year 2000. And in this paradise, the normal market economy was replaced with a socialistic planned economy. And the humans in this book have given up their individual freedoms and are basically industrial robots, biorobots, that get their exercises and their purpose in life told by the state, and are biorobots without independent thoughts, and basically only human machines. Sounds similar? Yes, that is exactly also what Wundtian philosophy basically always said, that humans would be just biorobots, or yeah, soulless robots. Does that sound like a horror story? It's more than a horror story, because these people were hell-bent on getting this communist, socialist, nightmarish utopia into reality. And they had the money and the structures behind them to do so. And one of their ways to do so was infiltrating all systems like education and spread their ideologies over these systems. So, okay, I'm saying here, after I looked through some collections from quotations from Dewey, I came to the conclusion that Dewey himself was a pretty stupid human being, but also pretty cunning. And he used nebulous language where you need to be consciously aware of your mental state and what you're reading and what he says to avoid getting mentally poisoned by his stupid blunder, basically. Yeah. Okay, let's address his plans to the deliberate dumbing down of youths. Samuel Blumenfeld has researched stuff about this and made some articles about this, and I'm also citing the original books from Dewey himself. Source material, of course, in the description. We are not making anything up here. And here he says, Dewey says, in the University of Chicago Press, 1896, it is one of the great mistakes of education to make reading and writing constitute the bulk of the schoolwork the first 2 years. Oh, so he goes by this logic. He wants to first build the roof of the house and after that the foundation. It doesn't work like this. It doesn't work. It's only working in his stupid communist socialist mind, where only ideology has place and not logic and facts and reality. And he thinks that classical education, in America, this so-called classical education was, for example, Greek, Latin, rhetoric, and logic. Of course, rhetoric and logic let you be consciously aware of what others say to prevent yourself from getting indoctrinated, and they get you to think free and critical, really critical, but critical race theory critical, and logic, of course. Logic is something that Dewey hates the most and is himself basically the most incapable of when you read his silly teachings. So, okay. Now let's go on about his manipulative teachings. He says, in the first place, physiologists are coming to believe that the sense organs and connected nerve... Oh, I almost forgot. I need to say this to prevent this video from getting taken down. If you find anything racist, this is a quotation from an old book. This is not my point of view, this is what this man said. So, deal with it. In the first place, physiologists are coming to believe that the sense organs and connected nerve and motor apparatus of the child are not at this period best adapted to the confining and analytic work of learning to read and write. There is an order in which sensory and motor centers develop, an order expressed in a general way by saying that the line of progress is from the larger, coarser adjustments having to do with the bodily systems as a whole, those nearest the trunk of the body, to the fine and accurate adjustments having to do with the periphery and extremities of the organism. The oculist tells us that the vision of the child is essentially that of the savage, being adapted to seeing large and somewhat remote objects in the mass, not nearby objects in detail. To violate this law means undue nerve strain. It means putting the greatest tension upon the centers least able to do the work. At the same time, the lines of activity which are hungering and thirsting for action are left unused to atrophy. The act of writing, especially in the barbarous fashion long current in the school of compelling the child to write on ruled lines in a small hand and with the utmost attainable degree of accuracy involve a nicety and complexity of adjustments of muscular activity which can only be appreciated by the specialist. Okay, end of quotation. So basically, that's why it's important to have this social Darwinism of him in mind. He is really thinking that basically black people or Asian people have worse sight than white people. That is what these idiots really thought. And that's how they, with pseudoscience, which they hijacked, of course, as we are already told, they hijacked physiology and psychology to turn them into pseudosciences that basically pump out the results they needed to support their belief system and to support their unscientific points of view. That was how they did stuff like this. And of course, the human species has globally seen the same vision in all ages and in all overall races. There is no such thing. He's just making stuff up to basically pseudoscientifically justify that he what he thinks is the reason children shouldn't learn to read and to write at school. That's all. And children can already write and read sometimes even before they go to school. I was one of them, so that was no problem. And children in the kindergarten are also already drawing and all that stuff, and they have no motorical difficulties with doing that stuff whatsoever. So simple everyday logic already proves him wrong. He's simply crazy. It's garbage what this man is saying. It's complete garbage. So then he's going on about how bad school is for children in general. Yes, mandatory schooling is a bad thing, but not because of the reasons basically that he says, but because it exists at all. And his solution for this problem is not to completely scrap the concept of mandatory public schooling, but to form it into a different thing, to get his ideology out into the people. Yeah, he goes on to learn about reading, same topic, and the plea for the predominance of learning to read in early school life because of the great importance attaching to literature seems to me a perversion, is what he also said. And there are subjects which are as well fitted to meet the child's dominant needs as they are to prepare him for the civilization in which he has to play his part. Remember that communist utopia he's dreaming of? Of course, that's playing a role in this. Here we have the controlling factors in the primary curriculum of the future. Manual trying, science, nature, study, art and history. These, here says he, these keep alive the child's positive and creative impulses and direct them in such ways as to discipline them into the habits of thought, not into free thinking, habits of thought, habits and action required for effective participation in community life. Yes, in the socialist community he's dreaming of. Of course. Yeah, if you force any of this shit onto people, mandatory schooling, of course they don't want this. If I force you to learn 200 Pokemon, you won't do it. But you know, children today can memorize over like 700 Pokemon, can tell you directly what they look like, what they do and all that stuff, that's absolutely no problem for them. No one in school taught that to them, but they can because they want, because it wasn't forced on them. So yeah, there's that. Oh man, what a pile of dog shit. So now he's making more and more revealing statements. He says here, change must come gradually, step by step. Frog in the hot water. Frog in the water basin. First, have cold water. Frog jumps in. You gradually get the temperature up, and that way the frog dies. If you directly put the frog into hot water, he jumps out. So that's why he says, change must come gradually. To force it unduly would compromise its final success by favoring a violent reaction. What is needed in the first place is that there should be a full and frank statement of conviction with regard to the matter from physiologists and psychologists and from those school administrators who are conscious of the evils of the present regime. Educators should also frankly face the fact that the new education, as it exists today, is a compromise and a transition. It employs new methods, but its controlling ideals are virtually those of the old education. Wherever movements looking to a solution of the problem are intelligently undertaken, they should receive encouragement, moral and financial, from the intellectual leaders of the community. There are already in existence a considerable number of educational experiment stations which represent the outposts of educational progress. Okay, so he's going on and he's saying even more shit. So he says the mere absorption of facts and truth is so exclusively an individual affair that it tends very naturally to pass into selfishness. There is not obvious social motive for the acquirement of mere learning. There is no clear social gain in success thereat. Oh man, this guy is already so shitty stupid. Some say this is one of his most revealing quotes. So his logic is flawed again. If you learn medicine, if you learn how to heal people from illnesses, you're not doing this selfishly or just for yourself, but to help others. It's for the betterment of society and the betterment of the community to learn stuff like this. Learning is totally okay. Yeah, make up your own mind about this bullshit. But of course, he's yeah, he only wants learning for this socialist community he's dreaming of, basically. Commentary from this article in 2 sentences. Dewey relegates all art, science, philosophy, history, mathematics, archaeology, and all related academic fields to the trash heap of irrelevancy. As Price concludes, all the dumbing down we've seen in the last 100 years is right there in that little quote. And make no mistake, that dumbing down has been both damnable and deliberate. Author Bruce Dietrich Price wrote that Dewey not only subverted education, he subverted the very language of education with his nebulous and purposely vague concepts and theories. John Dewey and his friend, the influential Jewish Marxist propagandist Sidney Hook, saw the American school system as the thin end of the wedge in their deceitful game to slowly build a secular society with no moral absolutes. Using Rockefeller money to establish the Teachers College in New York, their goal was to create a new generation not quite as bright as their parents, and with every succeeding generation a copy the actual content of which facts data, objective truth, faded and became less clear and comprehensible. Educators were now indoctrinated to accept the viewpoint based on nothing more than Dewey's belief that what they taught was irrelevant, how and why they taught the main considerations. Rice correctly observes that educators now continue concocting an infinitude of programs, methodologies, theories, studies, research, insights, slogans, and conceptual breakthroughs. Yet all are meaningless when the children are still as dumb as a post and as thick as a brick. And the article goes on to directly call Dewey's philosophical views mentally ill or deranged, crazy, whatever, pick your preference. Without a doubt, Dewey's deranged philosophical views have been widely integrated into the fabric of America's education system. He had a lot of help in sabotaging the original system and thus turning it into the popular mess it is today. You find the complete article, of course, here. And he has written a book called My Pedagogic Creed. And his creed is that he believes that the school is primarily a social institution, education being a social process. The school is simply that form of community life in which all those agencies are concentrated that will be most effective in bringing the child to share the inherited resources of the race and to use his own powers for social ends. He believes that education, therefore, is a process of living and not a preparation for future living, which it should be, of course. I then made the joke that it's, a social process, or better, a socialist process. You can read the full book on archive.org if you want here. So, and he goes on in Democracy and Education, page 207. We're all instructors to realize that the quality of mental process, not the production of correct answers, again, no absolute truth for them, their philosophy, is the measure of educative growth, something hardly less than a revolution in teaching would be worked. So, he says, basically, if a child writes 1 plus 3 equals 8, and if that is right or not, doesn't matter for him. Oh, yeah, child, yeah, calculate what you want, whatever. Basically, that's his philosophy. Great. And now one of the best quotations. An education would be given which would sift individuals discovering what they were good for, and supplying a method of assigning each to the work in life for which his nature fits him. Yeah, basically, that is, again, this communist utopia where the state decides, oh, you are this or that, then you have to do work this and that. Without, yeah, you get it, you get the picture. So, and now we are going over the operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is who was this guy again? Edward Thorndike, right? Edward Thorndike made experiments with animals, how to train them to behave, not learn, behave the way he wanted them to behave. And that is basically what he scientifically studied, and he turned this into mechanisms of teaching children. Basically, what he did, instead of getting people, children, to learn and to think for themselves, They were trained and programmed like robots to repeat certain behaviors until he is satisfied with their behavior, and if they do not behave as he wants, they get punished, and if they behave as he wants, they get rewarded for it then. Yeah. So here is a quote of him. The work of teaching is to produce and to prevent changes in human beings, to preserve and increase the desirable qualities of body, intellect, and character, and to get rid of the undesirable. To thus control human nature, the teacher needs to know it. And page 7. The general law of association answered the question, how may the teacher choose stimuli that will produce the desired present response? By the principle of apperception, the same law answers the question, how may the teacher arrange stimuli so as to ensure right responses in the future? By the principles of habit formation, it is a fundamental law of mental life that if a mental state or bodily act is made to follow or accompany a certain situation with resulting satisfaction, it will tend to go with that situation in the future. The application of the law to teaching are comprised in the simple and obvious, but too commonly neglected. Put together what you wish to have go together, reward good impulses, conversely keep apart what you wish to have separate, let undesirable impulses bring discomfort. Basically let people feel what is right and what is wrong. If the authority basically does not want something, they let the pupil feel or punish them or lets them feel bad to make them make it clear for them they do not want this. Basically stuff like you heretic, children feel bad for getting called a heretic and don't rebel against the authority again in this case. That's basically how this method of teaching is thought out to be. And of course, Thorndike also went with his Wundtian teachings under Russell into the so-called Teachers' College, where his friend Dewey was already waiting. And from there, this method of animal training was since then used to train children into human robots. Since then, with operant conditioning, condition them into the habits they wanted to have. And now, important is that in the Communist Manifest from Marx and Engels, the 10th point is that of this stuff they wanted that is necessary for a communistic society, for their world revolution, is public and free, which means you don't have to pay for it, education of all children. Basically, public mandatory schooling is what they wanted and what they said is needed for their communistic world revolution, because they need to spread their ideology into children's minds. Source, of course, here in Deutsches Textarchiv, Archive of German Texts. You can view the manifest yourself. Problem. And now we come to some very interesting things, so-called invention of this outcome-based education. Now we are getting to the really hard root. Of course, this ideological subversion was tinkered with, and they are more and more trying to get to this goal of their completely of this communistic society. So yeah, you can read the complete article on eagleforum.org. For the book, I have some very big and very revealing quotes, and this is what the outcome-based education system wanted to achieve, and wanted to. Basically, it says what children should have learned after school. Now it gets really revealing. I recommend reading the entire articles, of course. It says here it lays out a plan to remold the entire American education system into a seamless web that literally extends from cradle to grave and is the same system for everyone, coordinated by a system of labor market boards at the local, state and federal levels, where curriculum and job matching will be handled by counselors, accessing the integrated computer-based program. Remember this state-driven system that tells people their jobs? Yeah, sounds similar, right? And they still have in mind this idea of this socialist utopia and want to get it into reality. So, yeah. OBE uses, the commentary from them is, OBE, outcome-based education, uses student as guinea pigs in a vast social experiment. OBE advocates are not able to produce any replicable research or pilot studies to show that it works. OBE is being forced on entire state school systems without any evidence that it has been tried anywhere and found effective. The best test of an OBE type system was Chicago's experiment in the 1970s with Professor Benjamin Bloom's mastery learning, which is essentially the same as OBE. Mastery learning was a colossal failure and was abandoned in disgrace in 1982. The test scores proved to be appallingly low and the illiteracy rate became a national scandal. Bloom, the father of ML, is well known for his statement that the purpose of education is to change the thoughts, feelings, and actions of students. Which means he's one of Dewey's fellows. Welcome in your country. Of course. And yeah, of course this was a colossal failure because they are not experimenting with systems to make learning better. They're experimenting with stuff to further indoctrinate people and dump them down even further. This is all what they have planned. That's the goal of these people. OBE sets up a computer file on each child to track the child's effort to master the learning outcomes. Learning outcomes, very important. These electronic portfolios will take the place of traditional assessments, test results, and will become the basis for the school's effort to remediate whatever attitudes and behaviors. Not math skills or reading skills. The school deems unacceptable. The portfolios will include all school psychological and medical records and are to be available to prospective employers after graduation. The computer portfolio on each child plays an essential role in the tracking of individual students. The computer records how the child responds to behavior modification, what is his threshold of resistance to remediation, and whether he develops positive attitudes toward the mandated outcomes. Parents are concerned about who will have access to these files and what will become of the data compiled on each student. OBE is a system that conceals that failure teaching children how to read, of course. And here, teachers are cautioned not to correct spelling and syntax errors because that could be damaging to the student's self-esteem and creativity. Oh, little snowflakes. Damn it. Yeah. The United States Department of Labor is a big player in the OBE, of course. It will aid in managing and training the workforce by tracking all students beginning in the 4th grade and routing them through vocational education tracks as needed. Functional literacy competencies are defined as an ability to read a map and a bus schedule. Sticht is also a member of the Secretary of Labor's Commission on Achieving Necessary Skills and as Associate Director for Basic Skills at the National Institute of Education. Yeah, blah blah blah. So basically, children only need to be able to read a bus schedule and a map, but no books. What a joke. You can read a bunch of that stuff yourself. Basically, I'll read some of these very revealing quotes under Goal 3. Students are to think critically and creatively and integrate experience and knowledge to form reasoned judgments and solve problems. It is unclear whether or not knowledge includes the kind of specific fact-oriented knowledge that most of us consider an essential part of education. Goal 4. Instructs students to function as caring and responsible individuals and contributing members of families, work, and communities. Responsible and caring are undefined. The outcomes also include honest and ethical behavior, which suggests a moral code of some sort, though presumably not a Judeo-Christian ethic. Another outcome is citizenship, which is redefined from its traditional sense to include a multicultural and world view. Oh, critical race theory, I hear you banging. And where was it? Is this? Yes. So basically, this is what has produced these so-called SJWs, you call them today. Yuri Bezmenov talked about that, and now that the time has come that these pupils, that students of this mental bullshit have grown up and have gotten to work in communities, in corporations like Hasbro and all that stuff. They are doing what they were taught in school, what they were told to do, which is basically spreading these ideologies they got from there into the society for the goal of destabilizing the nation and getting it ready for this global communistic takeover revolution. That is what Yuri Bezmenov said, basically. Okie dokie. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to some more examples, and then I think enough of this stuff. We can conclude the video in a few minutes. Here are some direct quotations from the official Oklahoma State Competencies Grade 1, which confirm that first graders will reach their reading learner outcomes by guessing rather than by reading. The student attends to the meaning of what is read rather than focusing on figuring out words. Uses context, pictures, syntax, and structural analysis clues to predict meanings of unknown words. Blah 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 blah. Even in the 12th grade, the child is still told that he need not focus on figuring out words, However, he must nevertheless demonstrate a positive attitude towards self as a reader, which means, oh, you tried for 12 years to get this nearly, this almost impossible or that hard task done to learn reading simple 25 letters. But okay, if eventually in a few years you can still try to guess that stuff, and someday you will have found it out by guessing. Oh yeah, that's right. That's what they want. Can't back that shit up. so disgusting. Yeah, and here the Oklahoma learner outcomes for mathematics, grade 1, make clear that the child will not learn ordinary arithmetic skills that will eventually enable him to make change at the grocery store, but he will instead be given a mishmash of so-called higher order thinking skills and facility in applying technology. The instructions state the long-standing preoccupation. The long-standing preoccupations with computation and emphasis on rote activities must change to a focus on fostering mathematical insight, reasoning and problem solving, both individually and in collaborative groups. In other words, first graders must sit around in a group and collaborate on their insight without ever learning the sums of 2 plus 2 and 3 plus 3. Learning the multiplication tables is not an outcome specified in any grade. OBE's behavior modification techniques are evident from the first grade. Here, the student will identify different types of family structures, though that no single type is seen as the only possible one. The student will describe ways family members resolve problems and conflicts. Oh, now you know where probably all this gay marriage push for and all that stuff came from, right? And here, many outcomes are listed that pertain to feelings rather than academic achievement. For example, grade 4, page 70, the student will enjoy feelings resulting from involvement in physical activity. Here are some of the Oklahoma outcomes that pertain to sex. The student will identify appropriate expression of sexual feelings. What had that to... yeah. The student will develop communication skills, including being able to talk with one's actual or potential partner about sexual behavior. Oh man. Yeah. This shit has gotten pretty much further, as you already saw in German schools already. Oh man. Unfortunately, that's what Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the famous Russian author and former political prisoner in Soviet Gulag, said in a speech in the mid-1970s, coexistence on this tightly knit earth would be viewed as an existence not only without wars, but also without government, telling us how to live, what to say, what to think, what to know and what not to know. Unfortunately, that's what outcome-based education is, a process for government, telling our children how to live, what to say, what to think, what to know, and what not to know. What the children say, think, and know must conform to the liberal, politically correct ideology, attitudes, and behavior. What they do not know be everything else. And because they won't know the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic, they won't be able to find out. OBE is converting the three R's to the 3Ds, deliberately dumbed down. And what they understand under higher order thinking is, student attains so-called higher order thinking when he no longer believes in right or wrong, which can be meant morally and also mathematically. So if 2 plus 2 is 3 or 2 plus 2 is 5, doesn't matter for them. Oh, there is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong answer to that. Think back to Wundt with his philosophy. Yeah, right, you get the picture. It goes back that far. And morally as well. Yuri Bezmenov said what they need the most for this ideological subversion is people that lack proper moral and moral standards. So what they want, what they teach basically children in the school is to not have any morals. Great. And Desolator, you said in your video you want in basically positions of responsibility moral people. Yeah, that may be true, but as you see, they have already thought about this and they are working deliberately against that. Okie dokie. So yeah, I wrote more about that stuff. That basically concludes my analysis. In the finished book there will be much more stuff about that, of course. And at this point I'll conclude this video. I hope it wasn't too long, but extremely informative. All material, all sources, these articles, news articles and books and their links, as well as this text probably are getting included into the description zip file. You only need to download the zip file and you have all the sources for your own further study. So you perfectly can see I'm not making anything up. I have sources for everything I'm saying here. It is as bad as it is, and we need to get the solutions. There are like homeschooling is one solution. Basically getting, as Desolator said, out of the mass media. They are infiltrated, as Yuri Bezmenov also said. They are here to, as well as movies, to indoctrinate you with this mental poison. And there are much better forms of schools, like this school in Russia, this Tekos school, which enables children at the age of 14 to be able to teach, not learn, teach at universities because they are that genius. And you, if you wouldn't have been put into these dumbing down systems, you would be an intelligent, critical thinking human being as well. That's your birthright. And we need to get this back with homeschooling and all that stuff. Free our minds from this. I don't want to really call it brainwashing. Brainwashing would imply that something gets cleaned. But what they really do is pollution. They are brain polluters. They pollute and poison the minds of the people with their ideologies. So you need to really wash your brain, wash your mind of these ideological subversions, and do yourself a favor and really get brainwashed by yourself by coming to logical conclusions that what you were taught is ideological bullshit, and get this brain pollution, not brainwashing, brain pollution and mental poisoning out of yourself, and then share this very important knowledge with others, so we can, as mankind as a whole, build a better society built on real knowledge, logic and facts, and not some stupid ideologies like this critical race theory stuff. There is no need for conflicts because of skin color and all that stuff. It's deliberately made up to get us into infighting. There is no point in us arguing and fighting about stuff like this. Okay. I'm holding it here. That was the video basically. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments section what your thoughts are, and I will in the future, probably, if this video goes well or is well received, give you more insights about many different themes. See you later, alligators, and good night.